Tigers and Gamecocks coming your way. 6:45 is when, well, we'll kick it 6:55, but your TV time's 6:45 on Saturday night in Death Valley. I've got a piece up at louisianasports.net detailing 3 matchups to watch, and I wanted to kind of get into that as I've had an opportunity now over the last day and a half to really kind of dive into this South Carolina team. And it's a team where the visual, when you look at them on tape, in highlights, and the stat sheet don't really line up all the time. There are some nuances to what they've done. You have to consider the fact that Lenor Sellers missed most of the Vanderbilt game. They got annihilated by Vanderbilt, but he didn't play, and he's a huge part of what they do. A team that has 6 non-offensive touchdowns this early in the season skews points per game, skews those types of metrics. And so there's a lot to dive into with the South Carolina team, and it's obviously a huge game for these two teams. I'll probably say this again tomorrow, but when you consider the winner of this game, if it's LSU, you rebound after the bye and a loss, you're 5-1, you're 2-1 in the league, you got a trip to Vanderbilt coming up, you're in a decent spot. You're a decent spot. If South Carolina wins, they've now won 2 league games in a row. You've gone into Tiger Stadium and won. You've rebounded from losing 2 league games in a row, and now going into a brutal stretch of your schedule, at least you've got a 2-game win streak in your rearview mirror. Both teams feeling pretty good. You win a game. You lose this game, LSU's margin for error is none for a playoff berth, and if you can't beat South Carolina, quite frankly, why do I think you're going to run the table? You're probably not. You're not, in fact. So LSU's season hangs in the balance in this game. I would argue further down the line, it may not. If you can beat South Carolina and you can beat South Carolina, you can beat Vanderbilt, and you can beat Texas A&M, that's a lot of ifs. But if you do that, your trip to Tuscaloosa this season is not on the line. You can work yourself into a place where your season is not on the line. It is, I think, in this game against South Carolina. And if South Carolina loses, they got 4 straight top 10 teams coming right in their face. So you're going to, at this point, have 3 losses and probably at least 3 more coming in a row. This thing's off the rails. So the loser of this game's in big trouble. The winner feels okay about it. So here are the 3 matchups that I have identified that I think are crucial in this game between LSU and South Carolina. The first place, I talked about a little bit yesterday, but I'll reiterate it in a more impactful way. It's LSU's tackles on offense against Dylan Stewart and really the entire South Carolina edge rushing group. Kyle Kennard's not a part of that. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's not there. But Stewart is, and he was a 5-star recruit, and he was a freshman All-American last year when he had 6.5 sacks and 10.5 tackles for loss. He is going to be a first-round pick when his time comes. He's just a sophomore. But at 6'5", 245, long arms, long legs, great motor, good balance, bend. He's got it all. And last year in this matchup going into it, I'm looking at Emory Jones, I'm looking at Will Campbell, I'm going, LSU's going to be okay. And Kennard got a sack, and South Carolina did get back there a couple of times against Nussmeier, but they didn't take over the game by any stretch. Stewart's a guy that can take over a game. And LSU's tackles have not been very good. Tyree Adams has had his strengths, had his weaknesses. Weston Davis had a tough go of it. He's coming off a concussion and a broken nose. Karius Kern's a true freshman. If you kick DJ Chester out there, he's out of position. There are not a lot of matchups on the field. I'm leading with this one, but there aren't a lot of matchups on the field where I think that South Carolina has a significant edge on LSU. This is one. LSU cannot allow Dylan Stewart to change this game. If you need to put Bauer Sharp on your right tackle's hip for 4 quarters to make sure that Dylan Stewart doesn't harass Garrett Nussmeier, do it. If you want to make sure your running back is kept in to have an eye on Dylan Stewart and help those tackles, do it. If you need to run the ball at Dylan Stewart some to keep him honest and make sure that he's not flying up the field, do it. You need to have eyes on him wherever he is on the field because he is that good. 3.5 sacks thus far. 7 TFLs thus far, and you're vulnerable on those edges. You're talking about big plays like a strip fumble, like a forced interception, like a second down sack that creates a third and not manageable that makes you punt. You can't have this guy wrecking the game. This is a huge matchup in this game. Dylan Stewart, edge rusher for South Carolina against LSU's tackles. The second one is not one I highlight very often, but it is worth it here. It's special teams. And you can make your Beamer Ball jokes and, oh, that's a Virginia Tech thing. This is his son. It's not Frank. It's Shane. You seen this South Carolina team? They're not very good. Their offensive numbers are atrocious. Their defense is not what it was last year. Their special teams is making plays. They are changing the game from a special teams perspective. Against Virginia Tech, coincidentally, in the opener, Vicari Swain ran a punt back for a touchdown. The next week, they were struggling against South Carolina State of the MEAC. Vicari Swain runs a punt back. Then, 2 minutes later of game time, South Carolina blocks a South Carolina State field goal, runs it back for a touchdown. They scored 14 special teams points in 2 minutes of action. Now, it's a MEAC team. That's not LSU, but they're capable. They're making those plays. And that's not it. Like, I'm watching the Kentucky highlight. South Carolina tried a fake punt with a lead in that game. Usually you see a fake punt kind of out of desperation, fake field goal out of desperation. No, they had a lead, a 2-score lead in the third quarter. Tried a fake punt on 4th and 12. They got 11.5 yards, ended up not getting it. But you see that they're trying to make a play on special teams to greatly impact the game. They very much view that importantly. That should come as no surprise. Frank Beaner did it for 2 decades in Blacksburg. Shane went there, coached for his dad, was a special teams coach. This is a big deal. Now, LSU's been great on special teams. Damian Ramos, 7 for 8 from inside 50 yards this year. He's 1 of 2 from longer than 50. He's been very good. You know that LSU is explosive in the return game if given the opportunity. And how about this? We maligned this team punting the ball all of last year. They could not hit a field flipping punt last year. Had 2 guys try and couldn't do it. You do now. You've got a guy that is kicking the ball a long way. LSU's 19th in the country in yards per punt. They're up over 46 yards per punt this year. You can't out-kick your coverage, but they're doing a good job of that. So I highlight those 2 matchups where it appears South Carolina has real strength. Not to intimidate you as an LSU fan, not to suggest this is a great South Carolina team. It is not. These are the 2 places they may be able to find a significant edge to change the game. If all things play normally, LSU is going to win this game at home. These are 2 places where South Carolina can find an edge. Now, what's the third key to this game that I found? It's LSU's defensive front 7 against the improvisational skills of Lenor Sellers. I mentioned this on Tuesday's show, but it's important to reiterate. This South Carolina offense is 92nd nationally in scoring offense, and those numbers include 6 non-offensive touchdowns. 6, and they're still 92nd in the country. You want a more accurate description of how this offense is played? 122nd in the country in total offense and in rushing offense. 122nd. There are only like 14 teams worse than South Carolina at moving the football. So, to me, in that stadium, when LSU has 2 weeks to prepare for an offense that is played like this, I'm going, okay, that's not a good matchup for South Carolina. And it's not. But Lenor Sellers is still a freak of an athlete. You turn the highlight tape on, he is still 6'4", he is still 240 pounds, and he can still go. And some of the times he goes, you think the play's over, there's a pass rush, some blitzing cornerback has him in his grasp, he shakes free. Now all of a sudden, we got no design on this play. We've got nothing of substance in terms of the structure of this play. And it's just, okay, who's going to run around and make a play? And sometimes Sellers runs that for 4 yards. Sometimes Sellers runs that for 25 yards. Sometimes Sellers picks his head up and 2 cornerbacks have ditched their responsibility and he throws it down the field for 40, 60, 80 yards. That you cannot have. The improvisation from Lenor Sellers is a huge matchup for LSU in this game. This is not an offense that's predicated on rhythm, on timing, and they certainly can't run the ball. And for some reason, Sellers has not gotten loose for scores this year. The sack-adjusted yardage makes his rushing numbers look pedestrian. It's under 100 yards. He's significantly better than that. But with all the sacks that they take, because he's not a great decision maker, because it's not a rhythm-based offense, because they have to really contrive passing concepts with quick dump-offs and these improvisation plays that I'm talking about. If you just play your assignment and keep South Carolina between the buoys where they've got to execute what they're trying to do, they will implode. I thought I was looking at their schedule and I was looking at point totals. I'm going, oh, well, they scored points on Kentucky. And then I go back and look at the box score and I watch the highlights, and they got a scoop and score, and they got a pick that was run back. And, like, their offense isn't doing anything. And LSU's defense is great. So how do you, if you're South Carolina, combat that? Well, I think I've laid it out. This is the way they would combat it. You blow up LSU's passing game with your edge rusher, who's a star. You make one or two huge special teams play, block a kick, run a punt back, fake a field goal. Those are game-changing plays, momentum-building plays. And then Lenor Sellers does some wild stuff because he's a wild, wild athlete. Like, that's South Carolina's path. If you're talking about, LSU's interior defensive line against South Carolina's interior offensive line, that's a win for LSU. If you're talking about South Carolina's wide receivers against LSU's DBs, that's a win for LSU. If you're talking about LSU's wide receivers against South Carolina's secondary, that's a win for LSU. If you're talking about the home crowd, that's a win for LSU. If you're talking about the competency of the quarterbacks throwing the football, that's a win for LSU. Like, this matchup slants LSU's way significantly in all the quote-unquote normal aspects of breaking down a football game. But South Carolina's got some strengths, and unless they rely very, very heavily on them, I don't think they can win the game. There is a reason why an LSU offense that cannot crack 20 points most of the time is favored by 9.5 in this game by the folks in Las Vegas. 9.5. That, to me, is suggesting you don't figure South Carolina's getting to 13. And there's reason for that. Because South Carolina might not get to 13. But the way they will is if these three matchups, which I find to be very, very key in this game, go the way of the Gamecocks. That's what you've got to protect against if you're LSU. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.